What's up? What's up, everyone? Welcome to my first show. I have Ed Schofield on. He's our guest today. Ed, it goes by grumpy old dude, by the way, not grumpy old man. That would be me, grumpy old man. He's a grumpy old dude, so we want to get that clear. Um, Thank you all for tuning in. Me and Ed had a conversation the other day. I apologize to you guys. I was on the road because I was going to work, and I was, parked, and there were trucks going by. It's like there was not one truck until I parked, and then all of a sudden everything was going on. So here we are. We're discussing Black Lives Matter. We're discussing the stuff that's been going on in Kenosha, stuff's been going on in Portland. But more importantly, we're discussing how all this is going to play out as far as the election and as far as what could possibly some serious social issues, some social unrest we could have going on in this. Now, I'm going to let Ed talk to you guys and let you know who he is, what he's about, where he's from. Ed, plug your podcast, plug your website, all that stuff. I'll go back into YouTube once it's done, and I know what I'm doing. I'll add all our links and everything. But go ahead, man.
Yeah. Well, first, I want to thank you for having me on as a guest for your first live stream. That's awesome.
Absolutely.
And I am the grumpy old dude. I am a former white supremacist. I was a member of the World Church of the Creator when Matthew Hale was the Pontifex Maximus, or high priest, leader of that organization, whatever you want to call him. I was a member of that church or organization for 8 years. I was also a state prison skinhead for 20 years in New Jersey. I'm one of the original members of that organization, and it took me a long time to get out of that mindset, mostly through education and a lot of dialogue, not just with people of color or Black people or minorities, however you want to put it, but dialogue with people that had different ideas and had better education on things like science and evolution and history. I can tell you this, that was a very dark period of my life. And if anybody is looking to get out of that mindset, or if you have a family member that has been affected by any of those groups, whether they belong to them or have just had interactions with them, then by all means, please reach out to me. I do have a lot of contacts that can help de-radicalize people and get them out of that movement.
All right. Now, Ed, now you mentioned you were part of the World Church of the Creator. I remember hearing about Matt Hale back in the day. How does that differ from like your basic KKK or like the Aryan Nation groups? Are they related groups? Do they, how does that work?
World Church of the Creator, or as they're known as now, the Creativity Alliance, they will ally themselves with other white supremacist groups, but people that follow creativity are atheists. They do not believe in any god or gods. They do not believe in heaven or hell, devils or demons. But that is an anomaly within the atheist community, because they do have a religious mindset. They have their own religious practices and religious rites, and they are recognized as a religion. Mm-hmm. The only difference being, that they are atheist, whereas Christian Identity, of course, believes that they are the chosen tribes of Israel, and the KKK, most of them are, of course, Christians.
Fascinating. Wow. In regard to like objectives, do all white supremacist groups have the same objectives? I mean, some, like in some of the Black groups that would be considered supremacist by some, you have those who want separation, those who want to fight. I mean, so is there a range of that as well?
There is some, white supremacist groups you can call them supremacist groups, but they are, like you said, separatist groups. World Church of the Creator is, in my opinion, not just a white supremacist group. They are a terrorist group. They literally are trying to push for the acronym RAHOA, which stands for Racial Holy War. They want to wipe out anybody that is not white.
Wow. 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 So, obviously, with our president being in office, with things happen in Charlotte, with his acting like he didn't know who David Duke was, some of the language he uses when referring to like African countries, when he called them, shithole countries, pardon my language, but quoting him exactly. The alt-right movement that with us that Mr. was it Steve Bannon worked for, who was actually working with the president as a candidate. Would you consider that a white nationalist or white supremacist group?
I would definitely consider people like him white nationalists. I don't know if I would call them supremacists. They have a more political view of things and look for separation as opposed to dominance, and I know people argue with me about that a lot, and they're like, well, they're still white supremacists. Yeah, you can say that, but there is a distinction. You have political groups that don't want to commit genocide. They just want to live separately. It doesn't make them any better. They're still, absolutely horrendous groups. And they definitely want to, promote themselves as being better than, and, being uber human or whatever. So yeah, they're bad, but they don't actually want to go to war. They want to separate and have, a piece of this earth for their own kind, and everybody else go live with their own kind.
Okay.
So it's not much of a difference, but when bullets start flying, it's a big difference.
I understand. So on the last show, we talked about the president. In your opinion, with your experiences, I told you I had discussions with people based on my time working in gang intelligence, where I would read white nationalist material. And this was during the time he was running for office. And I'm sitting here looking at this stuff and saying, hey, man, this sounds a whole lot like what he's saying. So from your experience and from your vantage point, is the president a white nationalist, a white supremacist, a racist? What do you think?
I think he's definitely a racist. I know, again, a lot of people are going to argue with me and say, oh, no, he's not. You can't prove that, blah, blah, blah. Look at all the people of color he has in his cabinet. Well, guess what? I know plenty of racists just here in my local area that still talk to, black people and everything. But there's very few of them that live around here. So they'll talk to them. But then when they're around their friends, they'll be like, yeah, I was just talking to, N-word, Bob down the street there. He's still a racist. Is he a white supremacist? I don't know if I'd go that far, but he is definitely giving them a better platform. He is definitely giving them a lot of leeway. And I will say this, and I don't care who argues with me about it, as far as I'm concerned, he's a puppet. And the people that are pulling his strings are trying to make him into the next Adolf.
Wow.
Period.
Wow. That's alarming, but it's not the first time I've heard that. I've heard people make those type of observations.
Yeah.
Most people I've talked to about it have been historians, political scientists, looking at it from an academic standpoint. They'll point out the similarities between the propaganda, like what Goebbels used and how it's utilized, how it was being utilized by Steve Bannon. And a lot of people say that the president dog whistles. I always say he signifies. I'm a Marine, so there's certain words I'll say, a certain way I talk that, the Marines will be able to pick up. If I say, Or we're gonna go hit the bulkhead, or we're going up to the head, things like that. We understand each other. I'm kind of, thinking he was saying certain things to signify to white nationalists and white supremacists as a base to kind of energize them to support his platform. Would you agree with that, or is that an overstatement?
I definitely agree with that. I want everybody to think about something. Back in the 1920s, the mid to late 1920s, when Hitler got into politics, one of his slogans was "Make Germany Great Again."
Wow.
And Donald Trump ran on the platform of "Make America Great Again."
Mm-hmm.
Is it just a similarity? It could be, but along with everything else he's done since he's been president, I think it's more than a similarity.
Wow. I'm going to have to agree with you there. I know a lot of people look at the acronym "Make America Great Again," and they think, he's just talking about, getting back to our strength and position in the world, et cetera, et cetera. But I always took, I am a Republican. And one of the things that disturbed me as I became a Republican like in, 88, 92 is when I really got active. But one of the things that started disturbing me is I felt that our party was signifying or I guess directing propaganda towards what I call neo-Confederates or white nationalists, kind of too much. Like, what is this all about?
Yeah.
And I kept saying this is going to be a bill that's going to become due, meaning that at some point the groups that you guys are signifying to, these are the neocons. It's all about the money with them. All right, the Reaganites. I would be considered an Eisenhower Republican. The Reaganite Republicans. It's all about the money, neocon. So they didn't care what deals they made with the devil as long as they got in. That was part of the Southern strategy, to get that base of people to vote Republican. And that started with Nixon and it ends with Reagan. That's when it actually, it's a strategy. It's not like it's going to happen in one day. I've heard Candace Owens act like it doesn't exist, which to me, that's a different discussion. But as a historian, we know it existed and we know it coalesced with Reagan. And then it started all this signifying to these groups. And I felt that ultimately, when we get to Obama running against McCain, Sarah Palin, when she starts talking that real America stuff, I always say, and I'm telling people, I say, you know what she's saying. She's saying everybody in the Eastern Seaboard, in Chicago, and all the Western Seaboard, all these metropolitan areas, we're not real Americans. The real Americans are the people she's talking to. It's not that she, it's always the heartland. You guys grow the food. That was, to me, that was racial signifying. And I think, obviously, running against Obama, that's what she was trying to say. And I always go back to, I don't know if you remember, Senator McCain was at a town hall meeting, and that old lady came up to him, and she was visibly shaken in fear, and says, hey, I hope that you win this election because, Obama, he's a Muslim, he's a this, he's a that. And you could see the look on Senator McCain's face, like, oh my God, and he goes, no, ma'am, we just have disagreements. He's a good man. And that's when I think he realized he lost the election. But of course, that Tea Party movement started. And then all of this kind of came and Trump tapped into that. And here we are with this, What when you say, now that we got to the point of Trump, let's just talk about a little bit more about what's going on right now. Because this is how you and I initially talked. All right. Obviously, we had the Black Lives Matter movement. We've talked about this. It is my position that the Black Lives Matter movement is attached to a radical left-wing ideology. And I don't think most people don't understand some of the dog whistling that Trump is doing to a certain group of people. I don't think people understand or appreciate the how far the radical left really is. And they have an agenda too. They have an anarchist Marxist agenda. This is not the Democratic Party I'm talking about. I'm talking about the people out here, from my observation, that are pushing the buttons with these protesters. Let's be clear. You got actual protesters who actually care about people getting killed like George Floyd that are out there who really mean what they're about. But I also have observed that you got people out there that are part of the radical left that are out there simply to engage police officers, try to make something happen.
Yeah.
Engage counter protesters who are on the other side who don't want their businesses looted or robbed or whatever, or who may just want to support the police, to agitate them and to cause situations where they can catch a clip of a cop hitting them back, and then you got your propaganda. And I think this has become. I felt that okay, once they started justifying the looting and rioting, what I mean by that, you had that lady, I think Alexis Atkins from Black Lives Matter, who comes out and says that the rioting and looting, the situation happened in Chicago. All right, guy gets shot in the South Side. Rumors hit the fan. Police shot him. Another unarmed black man. Before the story even hits the papers or hits the internet, everybody's downtown Chicago looting. All right, tearing stuff up. Okay, we find out that the story was rumored, didn't happen. The guy who got shot was gangbanging, shooting other gangbangers, shot
Yeah.
police shot him. But in any case, all the looting and rioting, and even after it was found out, it was predicated on a false premise. Next thing you know, well, it's just, it's reparations. I was like, oh my God. I'm like, I know she is. So to me, when she said that, it set up a divide line. Even people who are not anti, police reform, who think that the killing of George Floyd was a murder, that support in the movement, at that point you put them on a whole, they can't get with you no more, because now said this is reparations. Then you got people saying, well, the stuff is insured, and well, the Marxist stuff starts coming out. They're rich. The rich business owners, they can afford to lose some money. That's when you start looking sideways. And to me, at that point, you now made a line between law and order, all right, and chaos. Nobody's seeing it as pro Black Lives Matter or for police reform, against police reform. Nobody's seeing that no more. And I think that it's created a situation where it looks like the Democratic Party, because Democratic politicians, in my observation, are too busy tap dancing with the radical right, because they're tap dancing with radical right with the radical left, because they don't want to offend them. They feel that they lost last election because they didn't go too far to the left. So they don't want to get these people to sit down. So they don't want to come out right and say, rioting and looting is wrong. Go sit down somewhere. They don't want to do that. I'm hearing these mitigations like, well, it's the voices of the unheard and the people are frustrated, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that just sets a bad precedent. Now, someone asked a question or made a comment. We also have evidence of white supremacist groups engaging in looting. I believe that's true.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
There's agitators there,
Yeah. And there's been evidence that there's white supremacist agitators that started some of these riots. They kicked them off. And, people have to try and remember this. This is what they want. They've been waiting for this time. White supremacists across this country and across the globe have been waiting for this time. And it's so easy for them now to manipulate this situation. And that's why, people like myself, and I'm sure Richard would agree, we're trying to tell everybody, look, you got to keep a cool head and really think about what you're doing before you make an action, because every action has a reaction and you might not like the outcomes.
Exactly. Well, I think we saw part of that possible outcome over the last few days. All right. Number one, with the young man, what's his name? Kyle Rittenhouse.
Kyle Rittenhouse.
Yep. So he left his home. Mom dropped him off with an AR-15 with the auspices of protecting property. And, we're not going to, and you and I both agree, we don't have enough evidence to determine if it was self-defense or not. We got a group of people saying it was self-defense. We got a group of people saying that he started it. But I think that's irrelevant to the point.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was going to say. It doesn't matter. He shouldn't have been there to begin with. At 17 years old, he should not have had an illegal firearm in a state where he doesn't even live. You went there looking for trouble. You can't tell me you didn't. You were hoping for something to kick off. Otherwise, you wouldn't have brought a weapon.
Exactly. And you got people. The president won't say anything negative about the situation.
No.
That's alarming. At the very least, say, okay, well, let's wait till this is investigated and see what this was. A lot of his supporters are saying this guy was a hero. And that they understand that he was protecting property. This, that, and the other thing. And my thing is this: I agree with you. He went up there. He shouldn't have crossed state lines with the weapon. Number one. Number two, I don't believe in the state of Illinois. Maybe somebody correct me if you can be 17 and legally own a firearm. So this is putting us in a situation now that this happens, it's going to cause escalation. Then we hear the other guy, the MAGA guy, who I believe was a white supremacist, all right, up in Portland, who got shot. So now we're seeing an escalation here, in my opinion. What is your view?
I heard somebody earlier say this, and I'm going to repeat it. A buddy of mine, Chris Mallard, has his own daily show, and he said, "Are historians going to look back on these past couple of days with Kenosha, Kyle Rittenhouse, and Portland?" And I can't remember the victim's name that got shot up there. But yes, he was a far right member. He was a member of Patriot Prayer, which is linked to a group called Patriot Front, which I covered on my channel. They're a hate group. So 10 or 15 years down the road from right now, are historians going to look back and say, these were the first shots of the Second Civil War?
It's quite possible, because I think the lines have been drawn. And now we call this black versus blue. Let me tell you why I titled it that. I told you the two biggest mistakes I saw at the beginning of all this when the shooting down in Florida by George Zimmerman when he killed Trayvon Martin. And we see the beginnings of Black Lives Matter. There's the killing of Michael Brown. And then there's the killing of Eric Garner in New York. And all these things coalesce. And all three of those situations are very different situations. Yeah. Very different. However, right or wrong, however you feel about it, that's when these movements begin. And then, of course, it goes from the hands up, don't shoot hashtag to the Black Lives Matter hashtag. Immediately, I knew that was a mistake. All right. Now, don't get me wrong. I agree. Black Lives Matter. That's not hard for me to agree with. I agree that there is a definite negative history between law enforcement and the African-American community, and it needs to be addressed. I think the solution is quite simple, and we'll talk about that in a little while. But I don't believe I don't think that seeking that solution was what that organization was about from the jump. Because as it starts off, if you look to their platform, they had a basic identity politics, neoliberal smorgasbord of issues, LGBTQ, the environment. It was just a basic liberal platform. Not that none of it was wrong, but I'm like, okay, how does this got anything to do with it? We're trying to get police reform for this situation. So it was master of all trades, or I should say, knowing all trades, master of none. All right. And then, all right, when they don't have an organizational structure. Now, they did have some founders, but they were going this loose leaf, unlike with Martin Luther King's group, the Southern Leadership Conference, where they had central leadership. They put Martin Luther King up there so he could be the spokesperson. So when someone says something stupid like, oh, the rioting and looting is for reparations, that leader could come out and say, I know that's not what we're about. She fired or whatever. They don't have that organization there. And I think that's actually on purpose, because I'm not quite sure of their goals. I don't think that their goals are congruent with the goals of the African-American communities being affected. The goals of the African-American communities are just to have law enforcement to respect the community, be part of the community, do your job, hire more people from the community, get better training, and stop being racially biased against Black people, particularly Black men, and do your job. That's what we're looking for. That's the outcome I believe the African-American community is looking for. These organizations defund the police, demilitarize the police, all these different things that aren't part of the objective. It's like they're using The real issues the African American community has with law enforcement is a Trojan horse to get their agenda in, that radical left wing agenda.
I think I would agree that some of these groups are doing that. Now, there are some, Black Lives Matter groups that do not participate in extremism, and they will not tolerate it, and they do speak out against it. And this is where we get this problem. I think it's hard for a lot of people in this country to say, to differentiate that and say, well, this lady from Black Lives Matter said this.
Exactly.
And they put it on everybody representing Black Lives Matter. And you kind of can't really do that. But how can't you do that if they all say they are Black Lives Matter?
Well, see, and here's the problem. What we spoke about with central leadership. Every army has a general for a reason.
Yeah.
I know that it's the millennial idea and concept that this can be organic and there does not need to be a central leadership or a central spokesperson. But the two mistakes I think Black Lives Matter made, or three mistakes they made early. One was the name. Two was no central leader. And three, was no picking the wrong poster children to get your point across. All right. There was a 15-year-old kid in Texas. I believe it was Houston. He got shot by a police officer. They were in a car. Cop comes up, shotgun, blows the kid away. Black kid, white cop. Here's the thing. When this happens, this guy's in jail for like 30 years now. We haven't even heard the story because it doesn't fit the narrative. Not saying that police are getting, because we look at Laquan McDonald, that cop got 6 years, probably going to do 2 or 3 and being home. So obviously there's issues that need to be addressed. But my point was, instead of picking the ones where you could say blatantly, this was wrong and running with it, there's always ambiguity. And it's not the fault of the victim, but it's the fault of the narrative that you're running because you don't have a central spokesperson. So Fox News can grab whatever random Black Lives Matter guy, put him on, he can say whatever, and that's the narrative. You've allowed your narrative to be created as opposed to controlling your narrative.
Yeah.
Now, real quick, one of the commenters is saying that we have militarized the police with their warrior attitude. Defunded police means demilitarized focus of mental health resources, better training. Let me be clear and let me talk about that. One, I agree with that statement. I believe that under Richard Nixon, the whole idea of being a war on crime or a war against drugs militarized the police mindset as if you're fighting a war with the community. Police are supposed to serve and protect. History of law enforcement, Sir Robert Peel, who started the London Metropolitan Police Department, which our modern police forces in the United States are based upon, especially in the north part of the United States, in metropolitan areas like Chicago, New York, and Philadelphia. When he started that, that movement, or when he started the London Metropolitan Police, there's a reason why police wear blue uniforms. He made them wear blue to distinguish them from the redcoats from the British Army. He wanted that military separation. Also, those police officers were subject to the laws that they were to enforce. There was no special courts or no separate judiciary system. These people had to do their job and they had to be part of the community. That's why they had military ranks up to the rank of sergeant, and that was it. And then it became inspector, just like that, because they did not want the police to be in the military. The police are to serve and protect. The military is to fight a war. So yes, demilitarizing police philosophically, yes. But I know the commenter saying that, but what I've seen throughout, looking at people saying what they mean by demilitarize is, well, we don't want them in tactical uniforms. We don't want them with their tactical equipment, or they're spending so much on it. It's just not true. Those things are given to the police by the military or, the federal government. Honestly speaking, defunding the police is a ridiculous statement. It should never be made. It's like, who's branding this stuff? And then in actuality, if you want what I believe, let's take, for example, police should probably have about a whole month of mental health training. All right. Probably 2 weeks of basic hospitality training. Understand when you pull somebody over, they're not going to be happy and you can't get in your feelings as a police because they're in their feelings. All right. Maybe spend 2 weeks in a correctional environment without their weapons, dealing and de-escalating with people without being armed. That costs money. Maybe the police officers need to have at least a bachelor degree in a social science, maybe even a master's degree, depending on the jurisdiction. Again, that costs more money. So the whole defund concept, I was against, because even if you try to dress it up, oh, we're going to give more money to mental health services. That again is ridiculous. Mental health services are non-existent. That went away. That's why the prisons have so many mentally ill people in them. So mental health services are non-existent. So you want to take from already underfunded Paul and then try to fund a non-funded Peter. Both of them lose. Both of them aren't funded right. It's nonsensical. It doesn't even make mathematical sense, you know. And that's why I thought that was, to me, that was a silly concept, and it also turned people off. But I do agree with the militarization of the attitude. That needs to change. Police have to understand they're public safety officers. You're here to serve and protect the public, which goes back to what I said. One of the things that needs to happen as far as reform is police need to be part of communities that they're in. They need to go to the schools, the churches, get to know the kids, walk a beat. This coming from another town or coming from the far north side of town to come work on the far south side, that's not working. You have to be able to know the people that you're dealing with, and for them to respect you and for you to respect them. That's how it's got to work. And that, again, that's not going to be less money. That's going to cost more, you know. But to the point, the three mistakes they made. One was the name. I told you, I knew white people that had a problem with the term BET when it came out. If you got white people that still don't understand why Black entertainment television started, by the way, it started because MTV didn't play Black videos. If you got white people that still say BET is racist, all right, what do you think they're going to say about Black Lives Matter? I'm not saying that you need to care about people who don't want to understand you, but you need to market yourself to win. That's how I look at it. If you want to market yourself to win. So the name was a problem. The lack of central leadership, problem. All right. The lack of poster children. One of the commenters asked about that. I'm not saying it had to be a Harvard graduate, get shot in the head and, eating a sandwich for it to be a deal. I think George Floyd was a perfect one to go behind. Laquan McDonald was perfect to go behind. Tamir Rice was to push those narratives. However, with Mr. Floyd, we had all the goodwill in the world. People in Saudi Arabia were protesting George Floyd.
Yeah.
Right? People in Canada, Mexico, all over. People were stopping their independent wars. Shiites and Sunnis, like, okay, let's hold on a minute. Let's protest this. This is how serious it was. We evaporated all that goodwill when we get to, well, the riots and looting is reparations. That's it. Evaporated. Because I'm gonna tell you something that people might not want to hear. And feel free to tell me if I'm wrong in saying this. There are people who would support the movement of in regard to police reform, who would wholeheartedly support it. All right, that are not extreme one way or the other. All right. But at the end of the day, when it looks like that you are co-signing on people busting into people's stuff and taking their property, all right, they are more concerned about you doing that than they are concerned about the police shooting them in an alley or shooting me in an alley. Because now you're making it, wait a minute, what's going on? Now you want to riot and you want to loot. Not that the protesters are doing that. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is when you have Democratic leadership, people on the left is still saying it's wrong unequivocally, we ain't for it. What you got is people saying, well, it's the voices of the masses. They're angry, they're frustrated, they're unheard. No, that's not what's going on. You're not running out of Sally's beauty supply with perm kits because you unheard and frustrated. They were looting the Portillo's in downtown Chicago, running out with cheesecake. I was down there, I saw it. So, all right, you running out with cheesecake, all right, or you running out with chocolate cake, right? That's not frustration being hurt. You looting the local AutoZone and making sure you come out with the right rotors for your truck. That's not, I'm unheard. That's called opportunism.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we got.
And that brings me back to a comment from a while ago that my wife put up here. How can you tell the difference? And that's an issue. That's a tough one because you have good people that are in this movement, but now because you've had this one group say this is reparations, now you have a lot of people scared, a lot of people whose families didn't come here during slavery or during the 1960s. You have, people that didn't come here until 1990s. And now they're like, well, wait a minute, how do I have to pay you reparations? I didn't do a damn thing to you.
I'm going to give two positions to that. And I'll probably get in trouble because I'm talking to a white person about reparations. I don't know if you know Vlad from Vlad TV. He got in trouble just for mentioning the word reparations. But I'm going to say this. On the pro side, if I was pro reparations, which I'm not actually, but if I were, I would say that it's not a debt for the United States government to pay alone. That is a debt for the British, the Dutch, the Spanish, the Portuguese, all right, the French, all right. That would have to come from the United Nations because the transatlantic slave trade was a worldwide business. All right. It was not simply the United States of America.
But now, think about what you just said, though.
Mm-hmm.
That would have to come from the United Nations. And there are a lot of white people out there who think people in BLM want reparations from them personally.
Absolutely. And that's how you have a movement that is for reparations. And I get into arguments with them all the time. First, I'm going to be honest. I don't mean to be disrespectful. I think it's nonsensical. I think it's not going to happen. And let me say why I think it's not going to happen. I understand the history and culture of this country, right? I really do. And I'm not saying I'm an expert or I know all things, but I know this. How are you going to convince the white working class that is steadily declining that my group of people, they see me on TV, all right? If you saw me walk down the street, I work a decent job, I make a decent, I have a new house, I have a new car. You see me rolling around in that. You're the white guy that lives in a trailer park around, down the block or down the 2 towns over. How do you convince that guy that I need reparation? And now I know I don't represent the average African American, but again, it's all perception because the reality of the situation, and I know a lot of liberals don't want to hear this, but white working class voters, the reason why the Republicans were able to snatch them up is because the Democratic Party made a conscious effort to decide that it was going to be the party of minority grievances as opposed to the party of labor. Because I don't care if you're gay, if you're transgendered, if you're a woman, if you're black, if you're an immigrant, at the end of the day, everybody wants good jobs, good paying jobs, safe neighborhood, all right? The ability to be able to take care of their kids, send them to college. And that requires the Democratic Party of the left should be the party of labor, of the working man. I don't care what color they are. So part of the reason why the Republicans were able to snatch up a lot of white working class voters is because they felt abandoned by the Democratic Party at the end of the civil rights movement. And that's when the Southern strategy kicked in. Nixon saw this. Yep. He said, hey, we can get this group of people on our side. And it took up until Reagan, but it actually happened. So how do I tell a group of working class white people, which is the majority of the working class in our country, yeah, we need to tax you and we need to give the black people some money. I don't think that is even a possibility. All right. I don't think I'll put it this way. If I were white, I'd be like, oh, hell no. If I was white living in a trailer park or working 2 jobs, there's no way you could convince me of that argument. And I know everybody's like, well, the government came out with trillions of dollars for the stimulus. Yes, they did. And they'll probably do it again before it's over. But they will. They're going to do it one more again. Guarantee it. Because they're trying to artificially inflate the economy. That money, they're giving it away so you can give it back to rich people. That's what it is. Yeah. All right. They give you $800. You're going to Walmart. You're going to buy stuff. They know they're sucking it all back up to the top. So it is not altruistic. It's just a way to keep the economy floating.
I'm going to be honest with you. If we get another stimulus, it's going for food and bills. Like, mm-hmm. I'm one of those poor white people you're talking about. Hey, listen, I'm not working. My wife's the only one working right now.
Oh, wow. That's tough.
Everything on my channel is funded by my fans. I don't have for that. If it wasn't for my fans, I wouldn't be here sitting talking to you right now.
Well, thank your fans, because I'm glad I got to meet you and have conversations with you. But now, so that's my point. How do I convince you in a situation that a lot of white working class people are in. I mean, it's the same situation a lot of black working class people are in. Let me put this out there. White working class people are in the same exact position as black working class people. The only difference is concentration, right? Inner city areas with large black populations are concentrated, whereas rural areas are not concentrated. The poverty is not concentrated like that. But everybody's in the same spot. And a lot of this is to keep those two groups of people from actually coming together. And let me explain why I say this. People always want to talk about Dr. Martin Luther King, and now you got people going to more of his speeches talking about, what's owed to African Americans, reparations, more of his stuff that you don't hear quoted. But I'm going to say this: the last thing he did before he died was labor related. He went down to Memphis for a strike for garbage men. All right. He understood the relationship between labor and bringing people up to a point of being able to do better for their families. He understood early, and this is, I think about the time when he got killed, when it was all about, hey, it's all about black people. I want black people to have equal rights. The moment it becomes, oh, you know what, man, these poor whites down here in Appalachia and these poor whites over here, they got some of the same problem the poor blacks. Maybe we need to get together and over with. And let me give you a little history why I know this is a possibility as far as motivation. The history of the United States goes like this: 1592, we know Columbus rolled. 1492, Columbus rolls over here, right? All right. Later, conquistadors come. They start bringing slaves. All right. The Brits start bringing slaves to the colonies as well in the 1600s, right? So you got these slaves, but you got these poor whites that are in indentured service for various reasons, come from England, Ireland, and Scotland. They owe money. Same exact class status as far as being trash. You weren't a white male landowner. You weren't nothing. All right. That being said, during that time, those blacks and whites got together and had approximately 12 rebellions where they attacked those rich whites. All right. The rich white male class. Now, here's what happened. Those white landowners figured out something. This ain't going to work. There's too many of them. The black ones and the white ones, they were marrying each other, having babies, all kinds of stuff. That's when they started making laws where they couldn't get married or couldn't have children, or the status of those children would be slave as opposed to free. That's when that starts developing in the 1600s. So that's when the powers that be realized, hey, we can't have this. So what we gonna do? Let's tell the white indentured service, hey, did you know you're white? Did you know you're better than those blacks? So that separates the labor force. Now, if people don't believe me, they did it again, right? When we get to the Gilded Age, labor movement is hidden, right? Again, you got blacks that are coming from the South. You got immigrants coming over. People are starting to say, oh, let's unionize. The powers that be, the robber barons at the time, have an agenda. Hey, by the way, you white Irish workers, y'all a little bit better than those Negroes coming from the South. We'll give you a couple of dollars more an hour. Keep them out your labor union. All right. Separate the working class. This is a tried and true method that happens over and over again. And we're living in one right now. Separate the working class. We're arguing about race. We're arguing about who's black, who's white, but nobody's talking about somebody else get their hand in our pocket. We sit here arguing about this, hands in the pocket, taking money out, just running it out. So at some point, we're going to have to figure that out. But right now, the subject at hand, like you said, the subject at hand now is we got to hope that this violence doesn't spark up. And like one of the commenters, Mr. Vincent Gaddis is one of the commenters. And I'm going to have Vincent. Vincent, I'm going to have to have you on the show one of these days, by the way. Let me know if that's something you want to do. But what we have is, all right, at this point, we got escalation. And it's true. There are probably some white supremacists working with as covert operations in those groups, setting stuff off. But there's people in those groups that want to set stuff off too, So now the confusion is there. You can't unring this bell, is what I'm saying. And I think this is going to have a direct effect on this election. And I think this will be the reason that Trump wins this election. I hope I'm wrong. I hope somebody come back in November and tell me, you were wrong. Okay, like I said, I'm not prophesying, but I am forecasting as a political scientist, as a historian. It looks like he's going to win. because now people are more afraid of being robbed and looted than they are concerned about me dying with a knee in my neck. Now, for the first month after that, everybody was concerned about George Floyd. You know, NBA has changed its tactics. NFL's apologized to Kaepernick, all kinds of stuff. That's marketing. They know where the money's at.
Yep.
That doesn't necessarily translate to how these votes are going to go. You know?
No. And I want everybody to remember this. It looked like Hillary Clinton was going to win. It looked like she was leading in the polls until it came down to count time. And then Trump pulled it off. So even if you think it looks like Biden's going to win, get out there and vote, because I don't know if we can survive another 4 years.
No.
I'm being honest. If he wins, this country is going to explode. It's going to get real bad, real fast.
Mm-hmm. And that is what my friend of mine today, and he was, and I kind of got on him. I'm saying, they're asking me, how is you as a Republican not supporting Trump? Let me be clear. I'm a Republican, but I'm not stupid. Okay, and let me be clear. I don't believe in voting for a party. I vote for individuals. All right. I look for candidates who are going to do the best for my community. I don't care if you're a Republican or Democrat or independent. If I can hold you accountable and you got an agenda that works for me, I'm going to vote for you. As far as racism in the Republican Party, a lot of people say, how can you be a Republican and so racist? I see as much, if not the same amount of racism in the Democratic Party as I do the Republican Party. It manifests itself differently and it has different results. I won't go into it. We'll do another show politically where I'll break down the political parties and why I feel that way, that the Democrats are no better. Now, they're Democratic candidates and Republican candidates I support, absolutely. Not as many Republicans right now because everybody seems to have drank the Trump Kool-Aid. And any Republican who speaks against Trump, shoot. I got friends that are neocons, that were Reaganites and Bushites that they call straight up, rhinos. They're not even, but look, Colin Powell, war hero. They don't respect him. Michael Steele, no respect. George W. Bush, no respect from the Republican Party right now. And me, I'm an Eisenhower Republican, so I might as well be a communist. to them, I'm about to come in with the Soviet red flag. So this is how bad the party has gotten. Now, I'll tell you, if he gets reelected, I think we're going to see a different alignment in parties, though. I think the Democrats are going to go further to the left, and I think there's going to open up room for a real third party. Nothing against the Tree Party, the Green Party, whatever parties, but they pretty much put out most of the amount of Republicans are gone, man. They don't have a voice, unless it's a blue state like Illinois or California or something. But it's a bad situation right now.
Yeah, and again, just to touch on that, how can you tell the difference? It's hard. There are a lot of white supremacists or white separatists or just racist people who don't belong to any organization, and they keep that separate from their politics.
Mm-hmm.
So it's hard to differentiate that. I guess in a way, maybe I have a step up on how to notice this propaganda because I was involved in it for so long, and I can pick that stuff out. For the common person, it might not be that easy, but if you hear someone, who was in the movement like myself, or if you know somebody like Richard who studies politics and they tell you, hey, look, this is what this is, you might want to pay attention to that, and stop just saying, oh, you're fear mongering.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not fear mongering. I'm trying to let people know what I've seen and heard, and from my lived experience, what it is.
Right. And that's the thing, man. I've gotten frustrated a few times trying to explain to people, this is what this is. Would it be safe to say, all right, I know a lot of white people who voted for Trump. They get defensive about the idea when I propose, hey, this stuff is white nationalism. He's signifying to specific groups. I think that it's just hard for them to accept it for a couple reasons. One, if they accept it, then they feel like it's saying something about them being racist, possibly. And they don't deal with race in a way as I, as a black person, or you, when you as a white supremacist, they don't deal with it on a day-to-day basis where they understand the significance of what's being said. You know, I explained one time, I tried to explain to someone about the Confederate flag thing, the battle flag.
Yeah.
You know, as a Marine, as far as I'm concerned, it's flag of traitors. And I've gotten into arguments with him about that. General Lee was a traitor, all right? All of the guys he went to West Point with, those generals that were in the Union Army, Montgomery Meigs being the Army Quartermaster General at that time, they wanted him dead because they said he should have knew better, and he broke his oath. And at that time, the military was under 101 codes of conduct or codes of war, something like that. I forgot what it's called, but it wasn't the UCMJ. But that stuff, the UCMJ ain't got none of that. You get executed for about 100 of the 101, and one of them was treason. General Lee was hooked up at least 8 different ways on that, and they wanted him dead. They thought he was a traitor, and then of course, at the end of the war, Jefferson Davis and the boys started trying to rebuild, redesign history to make it look different than what it was.
Yeah.
But I say all that to say, the Confederate flag, I see it as a symbol of traitors, of the enemy. But more importantly, I try to explain to some white people, I say, look, if I'm walking down the street and I see, let's say it's a Dukes of Hazzard convention. I don't know that, but it's a Dukes of Hazzard convention down the street. I see a bunch of Confederate flags. I'm turning around going the other way. All right. It's just as I'm never gonna know it was a Dukes of Hazzard convention because I don't know what that means. Because it could be a entirely different type of convention that I won't be welcome to.
Yeah.
And people don't understand that. Oh no, I just like the flag. I'm like, no, you have to understand what these things mean and what people mean when they're utilizing certain symbolism, you know. But like I said, I've talked to people, I tried to explain it. I'm glad that you took the time to explain it. You know, and there's still gonna be people thinking that we're both full of it, you know. Oh, what do they know? You know,
I'm going to put this out there for anybody saying, well, it's part of our heritage or part of my heritage. Okay, that's fine. If that's your heritage, if you have ancestors that fought for the Confederacy, well, I'm sorry, but your ancestors fought against the United States. So you got 2 choices. You're either going to claim to be an American or you're going to claim to be a rebel. And if you're a rebel, you're guilty of insurrection. You need to think about that.
True. Hey, true. I agree with that 100%. You know, I agree with that 100%.
Yeah,
I know.
I'm tired of hearing people say, oh, you know, I'm a proud American. You're flying a rebel flag. How does that make you a proud American? Because you're not standing up for this country. You're standing up for a country that got defeated and wiped out completely.
Exactly. You know, and I think even when Trump had conversations about the Confederate flag or some of these Confederate monuments, let me be clear. I was all for the removing of all Confederate monuments because they were monuments to traitor generals and traitor colonels. People, in my opinion, as a Marine, this doesn't mean as a black man, as a Marine, they should have been executed. All right. There's a reason why they took General Lee's property and made it Arlington Cemetery. There was a point to that. But I was for the removing of those statues by the rule of law, meaning the legislature or the city council will vote on it and it will be removed in an orderly fashion.
Yeah.
Now, of course, things go to the absurd and it makes that now I can't even have that discussion because we have people tearing down Frederick Douglass's statue or tearing down Abraham Lincoln's statue, just tearing down statues. Then they go after Christopher Columbus. Hate it or love it. You know, I'm not going to go into the history. I'm just going to leave that alone. But the problem was you had a bunch of people that went and decided this happened in Chicago. They go down there, they're trying to tear this thing down, man. Police like, you can't do that. Fights break out. They're fighting the police. They're throwing water bottles full of ice at the police. But they're catching on camera the police responding. The mayor comes out. Oh, my God, the police are so wrong. Before even reviewing any camera footage. And then the other camera footage comes out. The guy that got stole on, yeah, he was just swinging on the police. The chick that got her teeth knocked out, yeah, she jumped on dude's head, was trying to beat him. So now the mayor looks stupid. And this is and people gotta understand. People say, oh, it's just Chicago. No, Chicago is representative of liberal politics to the country. So what goes on in Chicago affects the national view of what is liberalism. So now the mayor looks like she's against the police, even when they're being attacked. That she's for the lawlessness of them tearing down statues, right? FOP president puts her on Front Street. He writes a letter to Trump's asking for help, which they categorically deny. We don't need the help. And then, like 10 minutes after she says that, there's a shooting at a funeral. The GDs and BDs start shooting each other. 15 people get shot. And now she got to go back. Okay, we'll take the help, but we won't take any tactical. It's like, you guys, Trump can't write this better. I can say people say he's stupid. I think he's an evil mastermind, or the people around him are definitely knowing they are playing this well to suck up enough of that working class voter base because look, think about this. He only got to win the swing states. Was it Ohio, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Florida? I think are the main ones. So we see what's happening in Wisconsin, right? All the riots and looting and Kenosha, the protesting. That is going to have an effect.
Yeah.
The president went to Wisconsin and did not even visit the guy who got shot, the black guy who got shot in the back by the police. I understand why he wouldn't. As a president, he shouldn't get involved with active investigation. But on the other hand, he's all pro Kyle Rittenhouse and let me go and talk to these people that are protecting their property. He's signifying again. Tell me if I'm wrong. That's pure signifying.
I've looked at some of the videos of the caravan that went to Portland, and I hate to say it, but there were more than a few vehicles that weren't just flying American flags and Trump flags. They had Confederate flags, and they had Klan flags, and they had Patriot Front flags, which Patriot Front is an offshoot group of another offshoot group of a main group, which is a white supremacist group known as Stormfront.
I heard of them.
Yeah. So Trump calling these people patriotic Americans, you might have wanted to know who was in that caravan before you did that, because you just told the far right they're patriots.
Mm-hmm.
You just gave them the green light to defend their country.
Wow. That's powerful, man. I don't think people really understand. And don't get me wrong. Let me put out this disclaimer. I'm not saying people don't have a right to protest. You have your First Amendment rights. All right, but all rights come with responsibilities. There are no unlimited rights. People always act like their rights are unlimited and without boundaries. There are limits. And all I'm saying is exercise your rights responsibly and think about the bigger picture. This is chess. This is not checkers. So just because you can have the emotional response to go out and say, hey, I'm going to protest, you have to think about it. All right. If I'm protesting at 12 o'clock at night, and you could be legitimately protesting, I'm not saying you're not, but what you're doing is giving cover to people. One, you're breaking the law because you're saying forget the curfew. Like I said, your rights are not unlimited. They gave you a curfew. Go home. All right. Because people are out with other agendas. Like the commentator said, there's white nationalists out there that want to dress up or be like protesters and kick stuff off.
Yep.
You're giving people cover to do this. You have to think about the big picture, because all this is playing into them swing states. Because I guarantee we done lost Wisconsin. Unless something different happens between here and now, Wisconsin's over with. Because anybody who's not in the city of Milwaukee, all right, who's in them suburban and rural areas who don't want anybody coming to their town trying to tear something up, that's who they are identifying with, not out of malice, but out of, hey, wait, they could have perfectly been all about that stuff with George Floyd was wrong. But the moment the left started qualifying the lawlessness, it opened the door for other people to be lawless and decide to drive across the border with AR-15s and try to engage people. Like I said, I'm glad. I'm going to be honest. I don't know what happened with the kid. I don't know if someone attacked them. Even if someone attacked him, like you said, why was a 17-year-old there across state lines with an AR-15? And honestly, that really gives the picture of what's wrong with law enforcement in this country. This kid, 17-year-old from out of state, walking with AR-15. Not one cop stopped him asking for ID. Can I see your FOID card? You know, I mean,
Now,
if you well, let me get some ID. Oh, you're from Illinois. Why are you here with this weapon? You
I
know,
I will say this though. There are a lot of people pushing this narrative that there were three vehicles that passed right by him and didn't even stop to take a look at him. I'm going to defend that for a second. Those three vehicles that passed him on all the news shows that everybody has seen, they were carrying EMTs and medical personnel back to the scene where the people were shot. So I don't expect them to stop. They were trying to get to the wounded. Now,
absolutely.
the vehicles behind them, the squad cars, somebody there should have stopped this kid and been like, hey, where are you going? What are you doing? And why do you have that rifle?
But he should have been stopped long before it even got to that. You're walking around a bunch of cops. If I'm working, if let's say that they say, hey, man, you gotta go downtown. There's riots going on. There's protesting riots. Okay, I'm going. I'm in tactical gear. I'm looking. If I see somebody not military, not police, walking around with an AR, I mean, I'll let you real quick, cuz. What you got there? You know, I need to know who are you? Why are you here? I don't care if it's open carry state. I can ask you, what are you doing? Are you old enough to have that? Show me an ID that shows that you're old enough to have that. Just like I can ask you if you're old enough to drink. If a 17-year-old's walking around with a beer, I can say, excuse me, I need to see how old you are. And if a 17-year-old's walking around with an AR-15, I can say, excuse me, I need to see if you're old enough to have that. And that didn't happen. Now, then this is America. If that had been a black male, 17 years old, youth in any perceivable situation like that. Not, not don't people don't send me the videos or clips of black people, the black militant groups getting together after they're 2 weeks ahead announce I'm going to show up with these weapons, or the one black guy who's hanging out with the white nationalists for some odd reason who they're letting stand there. I'm talking about the average brother walking around with an AR-15 is going to get stopped. We know the average brother driving the car is going to get stopped. So you're going to get stopped with AR-15. And that's the problem with law enforcement in America, the racial bias. If we get to that root of that problem, that racial bias is reflective of the racial bias in society. Like I said before, police officers don't come from another planet. They come from planet Earth. They come from our society. If our society maintains these racial biases, then law enforcement will have those racial biases. And that's just the bottom line. We have to deal with that problem.
Yeah. And speaking on that, I did watch a video where a tactical vehicle rode up to Kyle Rittenhouse and a group of militia members that were standing by this car dealership or wherever they were at, and gave them water and told them, we appreciate you guys. That, see, right then and there, number one, you shouldn't have said we appreciate you guys, because you just gave them a green light to do whatever they think they need to do.
Absolutely.
Second of all, when you gave them that bottle of water, like Richard just said, should have been like, hey, you got your paperwork and your ID for that weapon?
Exactly.
It's that simple.
Question. Yep. And I'm going to say this, and I didn't get to finish this thought about why I titled this Black versus Blue. I believe what has happened with Black Lives Matter, I already said my critique on that. Now, the second problem I talked about with you earlier, Blue Lives Matter. The absolute wrong thing law enforcement could have did was start Blue Lives Matter. Now, don't get me wrong. I understand law enforcement officers are tired of being disrespected, unappreciated, overworked. I get that. All right. However, to respond with Blue Lives Matter, you set up a dichotomy of it's either you're with the black people or you're with the blue people. And the white nationalists, they can use that Blue Lives Matter as a front for their white nationalism. And that's what they're doing. It is irresponsible for law enforcement to do that. And why I say it's irresponsible, because you are the ones who took the oath to serve and protect. You're the ones getting paid to do a job. And honestly speaking, get out your feelings. There is a reason African Americans are suspect of law enforcement. There is a history. I'll go over it as a different point, but it goes back to slavery. Like I said before, the U.S. Marshals job, one of their jobs used to be returning runaway slaves. All right, there were slave patrols. It was the police who enforced black codes. It was the police who enforced Jim Crow laws. It was the police who enforced segregation laws. So the police don't have the best reputation with black people. All right. That being said, it's up to the police in each individual jurisdiction to reach out to the communities that you're serving and ask the question, what can we do better to serve this community? Because that's what you do. You're serving.
Yeah.
Right. And that's how you got to look at it. You're serving the community. You're a public servant. And I don't say that to mean, oh, we pay your check because we pay taxes. No, you're a public servant, meaning you should be honored and find it a privilege to serve the public in that capacity. And in that, you need to give respect to the people who you are who you are supposedly serving and protecting. And that respect will be reciprocated when you do that. All right. And it's just not complicated, but Black Lives Matter is talking to cameras. Blue Lives Matter is talking to cameras when they need to be talking to each other. And I will say that I don't think the movement is necessarily speaking for the community itself, these communities. I think this needs to be grassroots. I think let's take for Chicago or Baltimore, those police departments need to. I'm not talking about that token neighborhood policing stuff. I'm talking about actually engaging, going to schools, talking to people, walking that beat, getting to know the people in your neighborhoods, structuring how you assign people to communities. So like in Chicago, they took the police out to schools. It's a pure political move. Chicago got a lot of crime. Let's just be real. A lot of gangbang. The police outside the school means the gangbangers that wasn't coming to school is going to come to school now because they ain't got to worry about 5-0 being there. Just that simple. I'm sorry to hurt anybody's feelings, but that's the reality of the situation. The actual response should have been, okay, we don't want police in there body slamming kids. What type of police we want? Well, let's find the police who have experience in education. Let's find the police who have masters in social work that want to work with children. Let's put these police officers in the school so that these kids get to know them. So if they do have a problem, they're getting beat at home or mom's getting extorted or beaten or something like that, they can talk to this guy or girl, make it a duty. Like in the Marine Corps, if people come drill instructors or recruiters, they're the best Marines in the whole Marine Corps. All right. So why aren't the officers who work in the school, the officers who train other officers, why aren't these the best officers in the force, the ones that the ones that are poster children for the force? And that's what we should have. But instead we have these left and rights. We don't want no police in the school. We want police in the school, as opposed to how do we do this sensibly to help protect our children, to help support our children? How do we do this? And nobody's having real conversations about policy. It's all emotional political responses. So anyway, I think we ran over time a little bit.
Hey, that's all right.
Yeah, but I mean, Ed, you got anything to add? Because I know I was rambling there for a minute.
Yeah, there is something I would like to say. With all this stuff going on, I am a former white supremacist. Like I said at the beginning of this show, I'm going to tell you from experience, you will not make a Nazi leave the movement by punching them in the face.
That's true.
It's that simple. All you're going to do is encourage. Excuse me. All you're going to do is encourage them to stand tougher, and fight back harder. Mm-hmm. We need more dialogue in this country. We need more dialogue in this narrative. People need to stop talking at each other and talk with each other. There are a lot of people out there who you might think are racist because of some of the stuff they say. And I can guarantee you more often than not, they're scared. And it's up to us to tell them, hey, look, we get it. You heard that. That's not really what we stand for. That's what that extremist group stands for. We don't back that up. This is what needs to be done. This is what Black Lives Matters means. This is what equality for us means, and so on and so forth. Have some dialogue. Don't just shoot down everybody all the time if they don't immediately agree with you, because a lot of people are scared, and they're validated in that fear because of all this crap that the media keeps throwing up there every day.
And I'm going to say the same thing about the African American community. Here's legitimate. I have seen Black children who are legitimately scared of the police now.
Yeah.
Legitimately scared. I was observing a couple of children around an officer, a couple of Black children in Chicago around a police officer. I think he was going to get something to eat. And I could see it in their eyes, the actual fear. That's not good. And don't get me wrong. You know, people say, well, they should fear the police, blah, blah, blah. I understand that narrative. I understand why African Americans, especially African American male, you have to be a certain way with police because of that racial bias. If I get pulled over, I have to be concerned. All right. Am I generally concerned to get killed? No. But I know that I can't even have an attitude. I can't be annoyed. If I get pulled over, I can't even be annoyed that I'm pulled over. You know, I can't argue with the cop, ask him why he pulled me over. Any of that could trigger this dude. If he is the white supremacist that everybody believes he is, I'm dead. If he's not, if he's just a guy with a power complex, I'm at least arrested, you know? So I understand that there's legitimate apprehension in the African American community, but now it's turned to straight out terror.
Yeah.
There's, and I don't think that's good for law enforcement. You don't want even young Black males. Do you really want them scared of you? Do you really want them to believe that at any moment you're going to kill them? Because as some people are going to run, but some people are going to fight.
Yeah.
It ain't hard to have a gun, and I'm not saying that, of course, I do not want to see anybody shot, citizen or law enforcement. But when we created this dichotomy, Black versus blue, you set it up. You set up Black people versus blue people. So anybody on the side of Black people is on this side. Anybody on the side of law enforcement, that's the proxy. The Blue Lives has become a proxy for white nationalism. It is a proxy for it. Now, of course, to the law enforcement officers out there, I know most of you didn't mean it that way, and you don't see it that way. You might have a problem with me saying that, but look at the people who are always thanking you for your service. All right, look at who they are. All right.
I'm going to say it like this. Like you said, there are far left extremist groups using Black Lives Matter as a Trojan horse. Well, it's the same way with Blue Lives Matter. You have far right white supremacist and extremist groups using Blue Lives Matter as a Trojan horse.
Wow. And I agree with you. And that's the problem. I think we encapsulated it well. All right, brother. Well, let me thank everybody first. I thank you all for watching. I thank you all for listening. I hope you're able to take something from it. You can get at me. You can email me at richardgraves@live.com for any comments, questions, or any shows you might want me to do, or any topics you might want me to talk about. I'm going to add mine and Ed's information once the YouTube video hard codifies there and on Facebook. I'm probably gonna have Ed on again if he can tolerate me again, But I think this has been informative, and like I said, you ain't got to completely agree with us, but I think you might want to pay attention to what we're saying. We're not just saying this. We're not coming out the side of our mouths with this. We're coming from some understanding of what we're seeing and what we're looking at. Ed, you want to add anything?
Yeah, the only thing I want to add is number one, be safe. If you are going to go out to these protests and everything, be safe. If you see somebody doing something extreme, setting fires, smashing windows and everything, leave that scene. Get away from that, because it's going to lead to some bad stuff. And other than that, I want to show my little logo back here. That's my little logo to represent everybody, because we are one human race. And we have to remember that, and we have to try and be better.
Amen. I agree with you, brother. I agree with you. All right. Well, it was nice. Again, everybody, please like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. This is my first produced show that I wasn't in the car drinking coffee, listening to house music. And I'm going to do more. I intend to have some very interesting guests on. And I'm thankful for all you who already do follow and support my YouTube channel. Again, thank you, and looking forward to talking to you. I'm going to probably do these on Sunday, 8 p.m. Eastern time. So if you want to come on, evenings around 5 is what everybody seems to think is a good time. So I'm going to probably consistently do the shows then. And of course, I'll have a couple other programs besides the political one. This is Coffee and Conversation. This is political. I'm gonna have our show that's about music, hip hop. Those who know me know I'm a DJ, so I'm gonna do that. And we're just gonna make it interesting, bring some different content to the channel. So thanks, and then check out Ed on his channel. He is the grumpy old dude, not the grumpy old man, the grumpy old dude. Check out his channel. And once again, thanks for tuning in. You take it easy. Peace.